Hello, everyone. We're here, but we're waiting for just about 30 seconds to make sure everybody has a chance to join us. Hello, walkers. Bonne soirée. Welcome to the Walkers Britain Provence webinar. And I just realized that I think you can't see me. So let me put my camera on. It's a bit odd to talk without nobody seeing me. Welcome to the Provence webinar from Walkers Britain. We are hosting this at the eve of our WOW sale, which will start on midnight tonight, and we will finish on the 31st of March. If you want to have a bit more information on it, I've put a link in the bottom right hand corner of your screen in the chat. It's exciting to see so many of you show interest in this colorful region of France. It's been drawing visitors for centuries. Think Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, Picasso, but also Edith Piaf, Nostradamus, to name just a few very famous ones. And you may actually be one of the visitors that have been already, or you are completely new to the region. Either way, we will tell you everything about the region. The speakers, tonight's speakers, will know lots about it, and they will also answer all of your questions, which during the talk you can put in the Q&A, which is in the bottom center of your screen. And then towards the end, we will answer all the questions for you. Now, let me introduce you to today's speakers. Peggy Dion, an Avignon, Provence native and a keen walker. She knows the area like the back of her hand. And we have Fiona Marshall, who's a French culture enthusiast, and she spent years uncovering the region's best kept secrets on food, of course. Both keep going back as much as they can, and they will tell you all about it. So, Fiona and Peggy, may I hand over the stage to you?
Thank you, Els. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Bienvenue en Provence. And Peggy and I are here this evening to tell you a little bit more about this area that we love. But we're going to start by telling you a little bit about Walkers Britain. So we have been operating walking holidays throughout the UK and Europe for 50 years. And we were looking back in the historical records to see how long we've been taking people to Provence. We think it was in the 1990s. So we've been taking people on walking trips there for a very long time. I think the first trips were hiking the GR4, the Grand Randonnée number 4, one of the big walking trails through Europe. And to this day, we still operate there. And it's a region that's really popular with our customers, with our hikers, and with us as a team. Peggy and I are both on the team at Walkers Britain. We're a small and friendly outfit of people. And we're here to help you and support you and enable you to discover this really beautiful region of France. So I think to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm Fiona. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Walkers Britain. I've been working in the travel industry running hiking holidays for 30 years. I'm from the north of England, from the Lake District, and I have a long connection with France. My family first took me on holiday there when I think I was 5. My parents had a caravan and we used to disappear off for 2 or 3 weeks in the summertime to Europe. So I grew up with annual holidays to France and studied French at school and ended up spending time with a French family on an exchange when I was 14 and going back every year until I was 18 every summer. My French at that point was very, very fluent. So these days it's a little bit more rusty. But I have this very deep love of France and I've been back many times with my own family. I've hiked in lots of different parts of France and in Provence, one of the areas that I love. But our real expert here in Provence is my colleague Peggy, and I'm going to hand over to her to introduce herself now.
Hello, my name is Peggy. I'm French, even if my name doesn't sound very French. I was born and raised in Avignon. That's where my family still lives, so I go there very, very often. I've been walking on the trails and on the hills since I was a kid in Provence, and I've had the opportunity to explore the region, every corner of the region in details in my professional life.
Yeah, and in fact, you were a true expert, Peggy. Peggy, actually, before she came to Walker's Britain, she was a guidebook writer, and she wrote a guidebook to the Luberon area of Provence. And here it is. There's Peggy with her guidebook. So if you speak and read French, you can read Peggy's book, published by Hachette. So she's got this incredibly deep knowledge, not only from being a Provençal native, but thinking about it from a visitor's point of view, I would say, and finding the hidden gems, the lovely places to stay, the best restaurants to visit, and the really interesting places to visit. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about Provence between us. So in terms of geography, Provence is right down in the southeast corner of France, and it sits in this really interesting position between the Alps, the Southern Alps, and the Mediterranean Sea. And I think that's why, or partly why, it's such a wonderful place to visit because you have this incredible diversity of landscape. You have the more mountainous areas closer in towards the Alps, you have the beautiful coast, the Côte d'Azur, the glitz of the Riviera, and you have the vineyards and the orchards and the beautiful limestone plateaus, the Gorge de Verdun, really dramatic landscape, and this incredible array of colour. And I think that's one of the things that always strikes me about Provence is the colour, the lavender, the traveling in the autumn, the colouring of the leaves turning, all the beautiful fruits and vegetables growing, and it's just a really warm and sunny place. So why do we love it? I think for me, as someone from the north of England, anywhere that has 300 days of sunshine is always appealing. The weather's fabulous, which is another reason it's brilliant for a hiking holiday. If you're going to be outdoors all day, it's much nicer to do it in the warm sunshine. And with 300 days of it every year, Provence is a brilliant destination. I've mentioned already the diversity of landscape, that I think that makes it a really interesting place for a hiking trip. And of course, it's not just beautiful to look at, it's a beautiful place to eat and to drink and to learn about art and history and culture. Provençal food, like all areas of France, is very specific. The quality of food is fabulous. The vegetables that are grown are of incredible quality. Everything tastes amazing, and some of the restaurants are fabulous. There's a huge concentration of Michelin-starred restaurants in parts of Provence. The wine, of course, the Côte du Rhône, the Provence Rosé, the Châteauneuf du Pape. Uh, Peggy's much more of an expert on that than I am. But yeah, it's got this incredible. There are lots of layers, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say about traveling here. It's not just a beautiful place to go for a walk. There are lots of other things to discover as well. And I think the quiet network of walking trails is something important to highlight too. In this big area, a lot of the walking trails were just paths from village to village, to the vineyards, to the olive groves. They've been used for centuries. They're not particularly well waymarked, which is why it's great to travel with someone like us who's going to make sure you have good route notes and you've got an app that can help you find the way. But they're very quiet. There are not so many people around. Of course, the glitz on the Côte d'Azur is very different, but that's another story. And I think the quality of accommodation, as well as the quality of food and restaurants in the area, is superb. Many of the hotels and even very small guest houses have swimming pools and beautiful gardens because of the summer heat. So we're going to show you some photographs now to give you a little bit of a visual flavour of what the area is like. This is a typical hilltop village. This is
Vaison-la-Romaine.
thank you. Blanked for a moment there, Vaison-la-Romaine. And this town is actually it's the end point of our Provence Vineyard Trails trip. And you can see it's perched on this outcrop, as many of the towns are in the area. Of course, these were great vantage points. Originally were fortresses, and where the little towns sort of developed. They're clustered often around the church, which you can see in the picture here. You've got all the beautiful trees, and that's again very typical of the area to have lots and lots of different trees, the cypressus and the poplar, and deciduous trees as well. It's really, really beautiful. Vaison-la-Romaine also, in the name, La Romaine, Roman. It's a huge archaeological site of Roman remains of an old town. And you've got the medieval town, you've got the Roman town, and just the sheer beauty of being somewhere like this. And there are lots of these little places dotted around Provence. Food and wine are very important, and I think they're particularly important to Peggy. She's typically French, and I'm going to hand over to her now so she can tell you a little bit more about Provençal food and wine.
The food you will be offered will be very seasonal, because a lot of vegetables and fruits are grown in Provence. It's really the garden of France. So, for example, if you go in spring, you will have some asparagus, like we see on the right hand side, the green asparagus on the pictures. In spring, you will have asparagus, strawberries. Then in May, when you go in May, you will have a lot of cherries. It's also the best season for goat cheese in the spring and the beginning of summer, but you will have goat cheese all around the year. In the summer you will be able to discover the ratatouille, which is one of my favorite dishes. It's made with aubergine, courgettes, onions, tomatoes, all very ripe and cooked in olive oil. It's delicious, very flavory.
Yeah, ratatouille, I think, is one of those dishes. It's so simple, but when it's cooked well, it can be amazing. I mean, I think food that I've enjoyed in the area closer to the sea and inland as well is the bouillabaisse, the fish soup. Absolutely delicious. And I think lots of really beautiful, rich casseroles often made. I think that the area or parts of the areas of Provence are very famous for lamb, and you get some beautiful lamb casseroles and dishes. But of course, always paired with the right wine. And French people are very good at pairing the right wines with the right food. The wine is, of course, hugely varied, lots and lots of different things to taste. And I think we're going to have a little chat about wine from our next picture, which is here, a picture of a glass of rosé, which I love, particularly as an aperitif. And I think it's often drunk like that. Peggy, is that right? Yeah.
Yes, it's often drunk as an aperitif, but it goes very well with a salad or lamb as well.
Yeah. But there are so many different wines to try in Provence, aren't there? So we've got all of the wine from the Côte du Rhône, the area around the Rhône River, the Rhône Valley, and we have the red wines of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. What are your favourites, Peggy? What do you really like?
Yeah, you really have different kind of wine. In the north, around Châteauneuf-du-Pape, you will have very rich and velvety with a lot of reds, with a lot of tannin. They keep very well for dozens of years. In my favorite wines are from the Alpilles. Well, you have really lighter reds, more crispy. They really nice to drink in the summer.
Wow, a crispy red, that sounds wonderful. And wine that keeps for thousands of years, not that I think that that happens with many people in their homes. But yeah, I think the quality of the wine is amazing. And also you learn so much about wine traveling in Provence because inevitably you're passing vineyards or little shops at the vineyard zone in the towns where you can go and taste the wine directly from the domain, from the estate. And inevitably, when you are tasting the wine, people tell you about it. You learn so much, and I think I always return and try and find some of the nice wines that I've tasted, and it's not often easy. I'm sure the French keep some of the best wines for themselves and don't export them. But anyway, moving on, talking about the Alpilles, this picture here, very famous painting by Vincent van Gogh. And he, of course, spent a couple of years living in Provence and painted, I think, most of his most famous pictures. And the blue mountains that you can see here in this picture behind the cypressus trees are the Alpilles. And Peggy, you tell me that they genuinely look blue sometimes. Is
Yeah,
that right?
they are blue. They are blue. Yeah, you see when you are there, but you saw them blue, but they are really blue with the lights.
Yeah.
And Van Gogh spent only 2 years in Provence, and that's where he painted his most famous work, the irises, the Starry Night, the Night Cafe, the sunflowers. He made more than 300 paintings there, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, so it's a wonderful place to go and learn about art. And he spent a lot of his time in Arles. And I think his friends, Paul Gauguin and Cézanne, were all there at the same time, all painting, and of course, all going on to produce really very famous works of art. And I think painters were always attracted to Provence because of the quality of the lights. And Van Gogh, coming from Northern Europe, from Holland, on a similar latitude to life in the north of England, from the grey skies, I think he found the colours particularly vivid. And still to this day, lots of artists move to live and work in Provence. It's a really sort of great place to go and learn about artists of the past. There's a fantastic foundation that you can visit in Arles. It's part of one of our tours. Where you can learn about Van Gogh's time in France. But still to this day, lots of artists are creating new things here. It's a great place to buy paintings. I think they're a really nice souvenir from a holiday in the area.
one thing that's very moving is if you walk in the Alpes around Saint-Rémy, you will see the landscapes painted by Van Gogh. They haven't changed. You will see exactly the same thing he painted a century ago.
So from, I think, the blue of the Alpilles Mountains to the ochre quarries of Roussillon, this place, this ochre quarry, is in the Luberon area of Provence. Our Luberon trip passes through this area. You can do this wonderful walk, the Sentier des Ocres. Sentier is the footpath through the ochre quarries. I believe that this, and I think Peggy assured me that this is correct, it's the world's largest deposit of ochre
Exactly.
to be found anywhere here. It's really dramatic, and you can see this incredible colour. And I suppose this is one of the things that attracted the artists like Van Gogh. You've got this incredibly diverse landscape, the blue of the mountains and the orange of the ochre cliffs and the green of the trees, the colours turning in the leaves in the autumn and like becoming green in the spring. There's a real light and colour. And I think this special light from the sunshine, being near the sea, between the mountains and the coast, there is a really wonderful quality to the light here and the atmosphere. It's it's quite uplifting, I would say. So, as well as the natural environment, there's so much history. This is the Abbey of Montmajour in Arles. Arles was settled by the Romans. It's a very, very ancient city. It's got an incredible amphitheatre, Roman baths that you can visit. This abbey was built actually in medieval times in the 13th century for Benedictine monks. And it was originally on an island in the centre of the River Rhône. But over time, I think the monks drained some of the water away so they could be more connected to the city itself. But there are lots and lots of interesting places like this to visit. And if you are really interested in adding that aspect of learning to your experience, there's many, many opportunities to do so, including learning about the popes who actually spent time living in Avignon. But I think Peggy explains this one better than I do. So over to you.
Yes, the Avignon was the center of the Christianity for almost a century. The Pope called Clement V was traveling in France to meet the King of France. He was having a row with the King of France, so they met near Avignon. And at the time, Rome was very troubled. There was like a civil war, so he decided to stay there until things settles in Rome. But he died there, and the next pope was elected was a French one. So the pope stayed there for almost a century. They built this fabulous, it's really incredible palace, Gothic palace. We on the picture we only see a quarter of it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's an impressive fortress, and inside you can see paintings, frescoes from the 13th century still on the walls.
And
It's
it was the 13th century when they settled here.
13, yes.
13th, 1-3. So like a long
Yeah,
time ago now. But they left quite an imprint. So there's this building, obviously, which I
this
guess is
building and
incredible to visit when you are in Avignon. But I think also interestingly, the Chateau Neuf du Pape wine, very famous, so quite close, it's not far from Avignon, is where the popes created their vineyard at their new castle, the Castle Neuf, New Chateau Neuf du Pape. They're the wines of the popes. So Chateau Neuf du Pape vineyards are very ancient. They predate the popes, but they developed them. And it's a really wonderful place to learn about wine. There are lots of wineries you can visit, lots of estates that you can visit. And our Provence Vineyard Trails trip traverses through this area and gives you that opportunity to learn about the wine, but also learn about the history as well. So, an iconic picture of Provence, the lavender, which blooms in the early summer. Peggy was telling me that the lavender actually, the special lavender grows in special places. I just thought lavender was lavender, but that's apparently not the case. So maybe you should explain.
no, there are different varieties of lavender. The lavender used for essential oils and medicine and perfume is grown in altitude above 1,000 meters in the plateau. And if you walk in Haute-Provence, you will go this extensive fields of lavender. It's beautiful to be there when it's our blooming and harvesting time. It's still harvest by the end. And apart from the plateau de Valençol, you will see during the summer lavender everywhere. On the lower ground, it's a different variety of lavender, but it's grown for the flower, the beauty of the flower. It's not the same type.
Yeah. So the special stuff is grown on the high plateaus at places like Valençol, which you can actually visit on our Haute-Provence trip. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little while. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see, fields of lavender. It's this incredible colour. And I don't think there are many other places in the world that you can visit where you get that sort of, where you see lavender grown in this way in so many different places. Very beautiful.
During the summer, it's a time where the essential oil is made. So if you walk there, you will smell the scent of lavender everywhere because it's harvested, and the oil is made at the same time.
So it doesn't just look beautiful;
No,
it smells beautiful
it
as well.
smells beautiful, and
of
you
course
you can visit the places where the oil is made.
And it's useful seeing it for sale in the markets as well, like cut and dried lavender. I bought some and brought it home. It was in my house. It smelled lovely for a while.
You can keep it forever. It's
keep it forever. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so I'm from the high plateaus of Haute-Provence to the coast. This is near Le Lavandou. We operate a tour here in this area on the Côte d'Azur, the Golden Isles. The sea's very inviting in this part of France, and the walking is quite gentle and very nice. Peggy, you like it here, don't you? This is one of your favourite areas.
Yes, it's very quiet and relaxed. The Golden Isles are the Isle of Porquerolles and Porquerolles, and they are a national park, so it's very well preserved and protected. So there's almost any buildings on the islands. So it's really untouched.
Yeah, and isn't this where the French presidents have a home? Was it Charles de Gaulle who originally
near the Lavandou, so on the coast. That's where that's where the presidents chose to have their summer residency. So Emmanuel Macron every summer goes to to the. It's called Fort de Brégançon. It has a very very exclusive location on the top of an island, and I guess incredible views on the sea.
But we can't see in,
No,
unfortunately.
unfortunately.
They can see out, but we can't see in. Okay, so moving on from the coast back to the landscape in the interior. And this is very typical of the area around the Luberon and the Vaucluse. You get the limestone outcrop and the plateaus higher up, of course, which is where the lavender grows. But down in the valleys is where they grow the vines. And there are different types of grape grown at different places in the valleys. I mean, the valley bottoms, the sides of the valleys, whether they're north facing or south facing. Um, but of course, this is another wonderful thing to learn about when you visit. But the landscape is really very lovely, and I think there's nothing nicer than wandering through vineyards and orchards and seeing that punctuated by rocky outcrops. I particularly love this part of Provence. This is probably one of my favourite areas. Anyway, up close and personal with the wine. Um, Wine harvesting. Now that's quite a complicated business, Peggy, isn't it?
It's complicated. No, it starts in the harvesting starts in the end of August with the white grapes, and then end in October with the reds. And during this period, there's a lot of festivals around wine. There is a lot of things happening in the villages. You will see a lot of activity related to the harvesting. It's really nice.
Yeah. I think it's really it feels like the countryside's abuzz at that time
Yeah,
of the year. There's a
exactly.
lot of
Yeah, yeah,
activity
yeah.
and I think everybody's in a really happy mood because they're finally harvesting
Mm.
like the fruits of their labors. And it's a really interesting thing to watch. I mean, if you don't live in a wine harvesting area, as I don't, it's kind of like, yeah, it's a really cool thing to sort of see and learn about. So, we've talked about the Romans. The Romans actually gave the area its name. It was the first part of the world that the Romans settled outside of Italy, and they called it Provincia Romana. And Provincia is obviously over time become Provence. So there are lots and lots of Roman sites to visit. Vaison-la-Romaine, we've mentioned, and Arles, we've mentioned. There are lots and lots of other places. Any other good places to see Roman sites, Peggy? What else?
In Saint-Rémy, there's a beautiful site called Glanum, just out of Saint-Rémy. You can walk there. It's really well preserved. You really understand how the town was organized. All the temples, the fountains are still there.
Yeah, incredibly well preserved, despite being almost 2,000 years old, which always blows my mind. So I think we're going to talk a little bit now about a very important part of French life, and that is going to the market. So every town has a market, and they're on different days of the week. And don't worry, we'll tell you which days of the week the markets are on in the towns that you'll visit if you're traveling with us. It's all in the route information. And the markets start early, normally at 7 or 8 in the morning. Fantastic place for buying locally grown vegetables. There are very low food miles here. The quality of the vegetables is incredible, but it's also brilliant for buying artisan cheese and charcuterie and honey from the lavender. And you can buy local wine. You can buy local crafts. I bought some beautiful lavender at a local market. You can buy lovely bowls and things made out of olive wood from the area. So it's well worth a look out and a wander to the local markets. They're also great places if you are a hiker for buying your packed lunch. So after you've been to the boulangerie in the morning to get your bread, you can head to the market to get your cheese. And that's pretty much all that you need to keep you happy on the trails through the day. And back to the hiking. These ladies are just in front of the Dentelle de Montmirail. And I guess this picture just gives you a little bit more of an idea about the variety of landscape that you can see in the area. We get lots of outcrops, lots of trees. So although it's a very hot part of France in some ways. There's always lots of tree cover, which can make it feel quite cool for the walking. You're never feeling like you're walking in a landscape that's completely exposed to the sun. It's not like being in some kind of desert environment. Um, and yeah, it's just really pleasant walking with really varied scenery, which I think a lot of people don't realize. When they think about Provence, they think of fields and lavender, and maybe they think about vineyards, but they don't think about the drama of the scenery as well, which is most definitely there. So, how to get there? Well, it is surprisingly easy. You can obviously fly into Marseille or Nice. Both of those towns have really quite big airports. Um, my personal favorite way to travel to the area is to take the train from Paris. So the TGV train, the Train Grand Vitesse, the really fast trains are very regular from Paris to Avignon, and it takes just 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's incredible. It's really, really fast. And I think Paris, you can also take the train from Charles de Gaulle Airport,
Yeah,
the TGV.
yeah, you can take the TGV from Terminal 2, there's a train station with
Yeah.
direct trains to Avignon and Marseille.
So super easy. You can buy the tickets online at the SNCF website. The website is in English. It's a really good website. I actually had a look at it today just to sort of see out of interest what a TGV fare would be from Paris to Avignon in April or May this year. And the cheapest fare I found was 25 euros. And the most expensive fare was about 120. And if you want to travel first class, it was about 140, 150. It's not expensive. There are lots of trains every day. I've done it myself. It's a fabulous service. Most of the trains have got buffet cars as well. And being France, the food in the buffet car is actually quite nice, much better than traveling on the train in the UK. It's fantastic. The trains run on time, and it just makes it really easy to get to this little corner of France. I think it's also really important to point out that a nice thing to do if you're traveling in Europe and you want to spend a bit more time around, of course, there's lots of things to do, but you can actually tie your visit to Provence with a visit to Paris. And that's what I've done in the past. I've flown into Paris or traveled to Paris, spent a couple of days there, and then taken the train south, or vice versa, done it at the end of my trip. And if you're traveling to Europe from outside and you're not going to spend a great deal of time here, it's a really brilliant way to sort of make your holiday a little bit more three-dimensional. You get one of the world's greatest and most beautiful and most romantic cities, as well as your time down in Provence. And private transfers, that's something that we organise. Peggy's the
Yeah,
expert on that one.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 So if you want a transfer from Marseille or from Nice, or if you're traveling in the area, that's absolutely something that we can arrange with our network of local contacts. We've already referenced the 300 hours of sunshine. I can't believe you must so miss that, Peggy, living in London now.
Maybe.
Maybe, I think she does. But yeah, the sunshine is, of course, greatest in the summer months. Been quite hot in the summer, and we'll talk about our different tours in a moment because different tours work better at different times of the year. We've deliberately designed them like that. But even through the winter months, there are still lots of sunshine hours in Provence, and the temperatures are still very pleasant for walking. So it's a fantastic year-round destination. When a lot of Europe is getting a bit colder and things are closing down, you can still travel here and have a wonderful time. The temperatures in the summertime can get quite hot in July and August, so there are some tours we don't run then. But I would say the spring and the autumn are fabulous times to visit. Obviously, in the spring and the early summer, you see the lavender in bloom, and in the autumn, you see the grapes being harvested. And through the winter, if you're traveling from anywhere else in Northern Europe, it's just a really beautiful blast of light and warmth that I think is good for us all to have. So, which trip is for you? We offer 6 different tours in Provence, and I think it depends very much upon you as an individual, or you and your group, your family, or what you would like to experience. First of all, when do you want to go? Would you like easier or more difficult walking? Is art your primary focus, or would you just like to learn about wine or art and wine? Are you a lover of the mountains, or are you a lover of the sea? How much time do you have? And there are lots of different factors. And I think once you actually start to think about what it is that you really want from your trip, it probably becomes obvious which one is right for you. But we're going to tell you a little bit more about the trips now and try and give you some pointers for which one to choose. So, If you are particularly interested in wine and learning about wine, then we would recommend our Provence Vineyard Trails trip. This is 8 days, starts in Avignon, so you've got time to visit all of the wonderful sites that Peggy can recommend for you, like the Papal Palace and the Pont, the bridge. And then you travel to the short journey to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, where you spend a few nights doing really lovely walks through the vineyards and visiting some of the domain, the estates, where you can take part in wine tastings. You can book wine tours there to sort of really learn in depth about the wines. I think a brilliant introduction because the walking here is relatively gentle. And then after your time here, we traverse the Dentelle de Montmirail, those kind of little jagged teeth that we saw in one of the earlier pictures, through more vineyards, very different grapes there, I think, very different wines grown to the reds that they create in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And you end your trip in Vaison-la-Romaine. Why would you recommend this trip, Peggy? What would you say about this one that you think is particularly important other than the wine for people to know?
Yeah, the walks are really gentle. It's a really good place to learn about wine because as you said, the region has a really old history with wine, and the wine of Châteauneuf-du-Pape are one of the first, or maybe the first AOC. The
Oh, appellation
appellation
origine
no,
contrôlée, is that right?
contrôlée.
Yeah,
And
yes.
it's really specific because the wine in Châteauneuf-du-Pape are made with 13 different grapes. So there is an art of assembling the grapes to make the best wine. It's really different from what you can see in every part of the world.
Yeah. So we've also chosen to use upgraded accommodation for this trip too, which is reflected in the price. We've chosen really nice 3 and 4 star hotels and guest houses. They've virtually all got swimming pools, which is particularly nice in the spring, the summer, and the autumn. Gardens, nice restaurants. Some of them have got fantastic restaurants. So if you fancy treating yourself and you'd like to learn about wine and you want some interesting walks, but nothing too difficult, then I think that this trip is a brilliant choice. If you would like to have a blast of Provençal sunshine through the colder months of the year, then we would suggest this trip. Provence Winter Sun and Walking. This is a relatively new trip for Walkers Britain, but it's been selling really, really well. It seems to be very, very popular with people. It's shorter, 6 days, and the hiking is still relatively straightforward. And the trip starts in Ile-sur-la-Sorgue, which is a beautiful little French town that is called the Venice of Provence. The town sits on canals and river channels, a really very beautiful place. And it also visits Saint-Rémy. You can possibly explain a little bit more about why people would choose this trip, Peggy. Why do you love this one, and who's this for?
Yeah, you will experience different aspect of Provence. L'Île-sur-Sorgue is very famous for L'Île-sur-Sorgue. It means the island on the river, and it's really an island on the river. The village is built on the river, so you have canals all around the river, and there is something you won't see anywhere else as well. It's a bit like in Venice. There are flat boats on the river, and yeah, you will see on the markets on people selling fruits on these boats during the summer. The in the Alpilles, it's really the pastoral. What we call the pastoral Provence. It's the old tradition of growing olives. There is fantastic olive oil in the Alpilles, and you can taste olive oil everywhere. And it's pastoral because there is a lot of sheep as well, and vineyards. Um, one of the villages most well known in Les Alpes is Les Baux de Provence. It's a fantastic fortress built on built on a rock. The castle here is 1,000 year old. It's absolutely fabulous. The views goes to the sea. It's so high that when it's really clear, um, you can see the Mediterranean.
Yeah. One of the things that Peggy told me about that she loves walking this area is a smell. Apparently, go on, it's the smell of the wild herbs.
Yeah, the smell, the smell in the garrigue. The garrigue is the countryside in Provence. It's made of very fragrant um, varieties of plants like romarin, wild romarin, white thym, all the herbs you have in the Herbe de Provence. They grow naturally in the wild. So, and when you walk they are heated by the sun, and the scent is absolutely
So it's like bathing. It's like bathing in essential oils, rosemary and
exactly, yes,
thyme and lavender.
yeah.
So yeah, if you fancy a blast of that in the winter, then this trip we run basically from the beginning of October until the end of April, and I would say that this is a really brilliant way to escape winter. Um, if you are particularly interested in art, then walking in Van Gogh's footsteps is probably the thing that you want to do on this trip in Provence. This tour sort of really focuses in on Arles and Saint-Rémy, the area where he spent lots of time. But it's still kind of quite nice, gentle walking through vineyards and olive groves. And visiting some of the really beautiful villages in the area, and the places that he painted. Peggy, you say it still looks the same, so
Yeah,
you can see those landscapes if you choose
exactly,
this
yeah,
trip.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you are an art buff, then that's the one for you. At the other end of the scale, if doing long days in the hills is the trip that you would like to do, then we would recommend this trip. Walking in Haute-Provence, walking in Upper Provence, the high plateaus, further north. Um, Again, sort of quite a different experience, showing the diversity of the landscape. This is a trip that also includes the very dramatic Verdun Gorge, the Val Sol Plateau, where the very beautiful and high quality lavender grows. The trip ends in Aix-en-Provence as well. So it's kind of a different area. Um, and I think probably if you are the type of person who wants a more moderate, more challenging hike, then this is definitely the trip for you. A very different side of Provence. And a lot of the villages here, they're quite remote, aren't they, Peggy? It's not like they're
No,
small. You're
no, they're
walking
very
through like,
remote and
yeah,
yeah,
like
they are really authentic. It's stone houses with um, help me, the roof.
the roof.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So like very traditional
tradition.
buildings. Yeah. And the accommodation's the same in those sort of traditional buildings and very family run,
Yeah, yeah,
like local
yes.
food. I mean, I love those places, where you stop and like you meet
Yeah,
Monsieur et Madame and like,
most of the food you will eat it will be grown locally. It's
yeah. So a great trip. My colleague here at Walkers Britain, John, back in the 90s, I think, and early 2000s, we used to run these as guided trips. He did this trip many times, says it's absolutely fantastic. Really loved it. So it comes strongly recommended if you are a very keen hiker. If at the other end of the scale you would like a more gentle experience, a more relaxed experience, then perhaps hanging out near Emmanuel Macron and his summer retreat is more for you, then this is probably the trip to choose. Walking on the coast, the Côte d'Azur and the Golden Isles, we talked about them earlier, the Ile d'Or, these islands that have been preserved as national parks. Um, this area, very beautiful, and the walking's very, very easy. We have people who take their families on these trips. It's very flexible. You can start late, go for a swim, stop for a nice lunch. But I think one of the most interesting things about this area is the flowers and the perfume. So Peggy, could you just like tell me again, like you were telling me earlier about like the perfume houses and the flowers here?
yes, it's an area where the flowers are grown for the perfume. There is the very famous village of Grasse, who is where the famous perfume makers of France are located, because they were able to grow all the varieties of flowers they needed. In the winter, if you go in the winter in February, it's the time where the mimosa is blooming. It's yellow, really bright yellow flower. It's everywhere, illuminating the villages.
So very colourful, even in
Yeah.
February. It sounds fabulous, and I think if you're looking for something easier, that's a great choice. Moving on, this trip, so rambling in the Luberon. This is probably my favourite part of Provence. I think because it mixes everything together. It's the hilltop villages and the vines and the mountains and the olive groves and it's really lovely walking. It's quite wild. I've walked here and like barely seen a soul all day, apart from local villagers. I've met a few farmers and chatted to them. It's a really nice walking trip without being too difficult. The kind of trip that you can do late into the autumn. We don't run this trip in July and August. It really is too hot, and because of the forests, there's a risk of forest fire. But the spring and the autumn, right through into mid-November, this is a fabulous place to visit. You get the classic hilltop villages of Gourd, the Senonc Abbey, which you might have seen pictures of, very, very famous abbey with lavender fields outside, the little towns of Bonnieu. And if you have read Peter Mayle's book, A Year in Provence, which was published in, I think, the late 80s, he writes very lovingly about moving to live in this part of France. And this is where he lived, near Bonnieu. So fabulous area. So why choose to travel with us? Well, I think we've demonstrated tonight that, well, I hope we have, that we know this area really well. And most importantly, we love it. We're very enthusiastic about it. Completely expert is Peggy. And she's the person that you probably will be talking to who will be booking your trip. And I can't think of anyone I would rather talk to if I was thinking about going to Provence than Peggy, because she's so knowledgeable. And she has great contacts. That's so important. We've been running trips in this area for 35 years, working with the hotels, working with the taxi drivers. They know us, and we have these sort of really long contacts and a very extensive network. We have 6 different trips, I think, that probably cater to every different interest. So no matter what type of hiker or traveller you are, I'm sure we can match you up with a great trip. We're also very flexible. We're happy to help you upgrade your accommodation should you wish, or extend your stay. And we'll provide you with really great route information, very, very thorough, and a mapping app and GPX tracks, so you don't have to worry about getting lost on those little village trails. Of course, on all of our self-guided trips, your luggage is transferred every day. You don't have to worry about that. You literally just have to turn up and walk. Extension ideas. We were chatting about this earlier, and I said to Peggy if she was going to stay longer. There are lots of different options. You could stay in Marseille or Nice or visit Saint-Tropez. Where would you go? And you surprised me with
Did
your
I?
yeah, go on. So tell everybody where you would
Now,
suggest.
yeah, I would recommend the Aix-en-Provence. I have to confess, it's my favorite town. Imagine an Italian town with a lot of squares. And beautiful houses from the 18th century. You just have to wake up, go to a cafe, sit there and see the people. There are markets on the squares every day. There's a flower market everywhere, markets in the different squares of the town everywhere. So it's really, there's an animation in the streets every morning. It's really, really vibrant town.
So
And great restaurants as well.
great restaurants, obviously. It sounds fabulous and lots to see and do there. So lots of options, and we're very, very, very happy to help you out. So before we open up to your questions, just to remind you that this is a brilliant time to book a trip to Provence because we're about to put the trips on sale. Only for a very short period. It's probably going to be our last sale of the year. But there'll be a little discount if you book between tonight and the 31st of March for any trips that we have the dates live for 2025, 2026. The discount's going to be about 7.5% of the trip price, so definitely worth doing. And I would say anyway, if you want to go to Provence this year, please book sooner rather than later so we can get you into our preferred accommodation. And even for 2026, really important to get your bookings in now if you can. The winter trip we're selling already for the coming winter, and I think what better way to have something in your calendar to look forward to than a few days walking in sunny Provence in November, December, January, or February, the dark months of the year. So I think that's all from Peggy and I for now, and we'd be very happy to take some questions, which I think Else is going to bring for us.
Thank you very much, Peggy and Fiona. That was really great and very interesting. We have some questions collected from like frequently asked questions from people in the past. So let me bring out the first one, which is how do I organize lunch, or how do I organize the packed lunch?
Okay, so yep, you'll need to take a packed lunch with you every day. My favorite packed lunch is a baguette from the boulangerie. And what time do they open, Peggy, the boulangerie in the morning?
Quite early, between 7 and 8.
Yeah, so you can go and get your baguette or whatever different bread you want to try, because sometimes there are some local specialities.
And yeah, I recommend the pambagna. It's a round sandwich with tuna, tomatoes, vegetables, and a lot of olive oil and garlic.
Yeah, it
It's
sounds
yes,
fantastic.
traditional
It
sandwich.
sounds fantastic. So you can go and buy your baguette and get your sandwich at the boulangerie. If the market's on in your town, you can head to the market and get some beautiful fresh fruit and vegetables, maybe some really nice local cheese. Of course, lots of the tours actually go through really nice towns during the day. So sometimes you can actually stop for a very long and relaxed lunch. That's also highly recommended, and we give lots of information about that in our tour info. If you're staying somewhere very remote, like the trips in Haute-Provence, where very small towns, usually they will have a boulangerie, but maybe not a great deal else. Speak to your accommodation owners and they'll help you out, get the packed lunch together. But I just love the baguette, the cheese. Oh, yeah. And I always take a penknife with me, not in my hand luggage. I've done that 3 times and lost them. But I always take a penknife with me because they're brilliant for picnics, for being able to slice your bread open and slice your cheese and slice your tomatoes and your cucumber and your fruit. So top tip, take a penknife with you on your walking trips generally, and also in France.
Excellent. Also, one of the questions people usually ask is whether you have to speak French when you go to France.
Okay, well, that's obviously not a problem for Peggy. I speak some French, and I think it definitely helps to make an effort, even if your French is very basic. Just greeting people in French, saying bonjour, thanking them, saying merci, bonsoir. Simple things go a long way. A lot of people speak English.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, a
They
lot of people know.
will be happy to speak in English. And
Yeah, a lot of people speak English. I think, very often though, if you go to a restaurant, the menu will only be in French. But there are some handy AI tools these days that can help with language. So Google Lens, if you hold it over something, will automatically translate it for you. So if you hold it over your menu, it will translate it into English. And also there are loads of apps that you can use these days where you can speak into them and they'll translate. So if you do meet someone and you've got to ask a really complicated thing, maybe what time the local restaurant opens for dinner and how to get there, then it's the kind of thing that you can do through an app rather than just relying on the old methods, which were waving arms around and drawing, which I actually loved. I still love to communicate that way.
And it works.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. It always did work. So yeah, don't worry about not being able to speak French. But I would say even just learning a few words. I think French people are they become much warmer when they feel from you that you have this interest in them and their language and their culture. So I would recommend, learning some French. Duolingo if you can before you go.
Good tips. Great. Also, if people want to spend more than 1 week, because most of the trips are 1 week, what trips do you recommend to combine, or what trips combine well?
Yeah, so the Luberon and the Van Gogh Provence works very well together. The Haute-Provence ends in Aix-en-Provence, so it's really easy to connect with another trip, and it will give you two aspects of the area. Yeah, it's quite easy to combine 2 trips. It's really easy to travel. There are trains, buses. We can organize transfers.
Useful. Thank you very much. That's good. Also about dinners, people like to know if they have to reserve a table and if the dinners are not included in the trip, what people can expect for dinners, and if there's many choices in restaurants, particularly on the Luberon trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason we don't include dinners is because there very often is a choice. And I mean, there are loads of Michelin restaurants, Michelin-starred restaurants in the area. For them, you need to book a long time in advance. My preferred method is usually to get to my accommodation, if I know it's a town with a few different restaurants, and ask the accommodation owners where they recommend. They're
Yeah,
normally
it's a good
really
tip.
good. And very often they've actually said to me, "Would you like me to book a table for you?" And they've actually called the restaurant and booked a table. Sometimes when you arrive, the restaurant owners will, they'll often say to you, if they know that there are limited options or there's somewhere really special, they'll say, "Have you booked somewhere for dinner?" And they'll actually prompt it from you. I think if you are a real gastronomist and food is, something that you're really, really interested in, and you're traveling to Provence because there are some restaurants you really want to visit, I would say, yeah, probably book them in advance to be sure.
Safer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it depends where you are. I think local knowledge is always really good. Obviously, we can all look at the internet and think, "Oh, that restaurant looks nice," but there's nothing better than getting that knowledge from a local who will say, "Oh no, don't go there."
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
yeah. So yeah,
And in the
always
Luberon
good for that.
area specifically?
In the Luberon area, there are lots of very nice restaurants to
Oh,
visit.
there are lots of Michelin stars. Um, in yes, in Aix-en-Provence, there is a restaurant I like called Grenache. It's really small, and they serve really. It's really small. It's on a small square, a bit not really in the center, a bit not outside, but the edge, and it serves really good regional food paired with beautiful wine. It's called Grenache. It's
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah,
In
and as well as dining out in the
I can go on
evening. No, see,
about
Peggy
this.
can talk about food all day. As well as going out in the evening, don't forget, like, lunch is a big deal in France. Like a lot of people, I mean, everything closes between 12 and 2, 12 and 3 sometimes longer. The government offices are often shut until later. The banks, everything closes because people go for lunch. It's important in French culture. So you might find that actually some days you end up you walk through a lovely town, the gorgeous restaurant, the red and white check tablecloths, and you just think, all right, okay, I'm going to actually just stop. We've got a short walk after lunch, or I can get a taxi or a bus. So, like, you can enjoy restaurant food not just in the evenings, but at lunchtime as well. And sometimes that's a nice way to stumble upon restaurants that you might want to go back to in the evening. You might say, "Oh, we saw that place at lunch today. I've definitely done that before." So yeah, lunch is a big thing. Sundays, we should also mention in France, not just in Provence, most things are closed. Restaurants and bars still open.
Yeah,
Um,
for lunch.
yeah,
For
but
lunch.
a lot of things are closed. So on Sunday, you probably need to think a little bit more about your packed lunch and where you're going to eat, and think ahead and speak to your accommodation hosts. There might also be information in our notes about this as well, depending on where you are, particularly if there are limited options. So just bear that in mind too, that most things are closed on Sundays.
And on Monday nights as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good information. I think it's time to finish up already. Time went by very quickly. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Tomorrow we aim to send you a link of the webinar so that you can look back, and remember that we're always here to answer your questions as well via email, or you can schedule a call back on our website. We hope you've already learned a thing or two today. Just a reminder for the WOW sale that starts tonight and finishes on the 31st of March. And we hope to see you on the trails with us very soon. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.